Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdark here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today we're going to be talking about players' do's and don'ts, which would be player knowledge and character knowledge. With me I have...
I'm Ted.
And I'm Dave.
Alright, so we're kind of, I mean we didn't say it, but pretty much we're talking about what a player's character would know versus the meta of outside of that player character. Like, hey, he doesn't know that he's in a game.
Right.
You know, that kind of mentality.
So,
and he doesn't know about what happened in the other conversation that two people were having with a DM that were at the tavern, you know, that kind of stuff.
So you have the very obvious things of, you know, a DM having, you know, kind of a one-on-one, you know, across the table, and I'm telling, like, I'm the DM, I'm telling, you know, you information, and then Dave, you know, possibly acting on it, or, you know, you guys getting involved in a fight with a monster, and someone saying, oh, well, according to the monster manuals, you know, they're weak to such and such. So if your character wouldn't have that knowledge, you absolutely have to kind of go with what your character would know, not what you as a player know.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, like a good example of this is in Scott's game, if you hey, do I know about this? And he goes, make a check. If you make a really good check, he's liable to go, okay, you know everything that's in the monster manual entry, right, and you've just essentially been given permission to open the book at the table.
Right.
Because he is now saying not only, you know, now you're able to take that player knowledge and use it as character knowledge.
Correct.
One of the things I find myself doing more and more as I game is if my character is not there, I ignore what's going on as a person. Mm-hmm. And I know this pisses off and annoys some people. I'm not going to take notes about something that's going on and my character's not involved with. And I'm just probably not going to pay attention that much because that, you know, otherwise I will probably take that knowledge and use it in ways that I should. And so I set up a little roadblock for myself to help me differentiate player knowledge and character knowledge so that I can stay a character at the end of the table.
I don't know, you know, I've probably, you know, over my many years of gaming, I've probably done the faux pas of acting on something that my character didn't know. I've gamed too long to be able to say, no, I've never done this. But at the same time, I'm not going to do that angle because I want to enjoy the story, whether I'm involved or not. So I will sit back and I will listen, but I do try to, you know, using my experience as a buffer, I do try to make sure that when I act on something, you know, that I have to act in accordance to what my character would actually do.
So, you know, playing this game for a long time and Dungeon Master for a long time, absolutely, like, it is really hard to separate character knowledge and player knowledge. And yes, there's definitely points, you know, throughout, you know, gaming over the past like 30 years that you know, I think anyone who's done it for a long time has been guilty, more or less. You know, at some point or another, sure, we grow out of it, we mature as gamers, and we get better with that. And I don't actually like completely shut out and ignore what's going on. I just don't commit it to memory. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, anyway, late 80s, early 90s were a little rough for me. I'm not good at memorizing things anyway.
Well, so yeah, and there's also a difference between doing this don't of player knowledge over character knowledge. You're sitting there if you're strategizing on how to figure out how your character could do this based on knowledge that you know from something else. That's a good like indicator that you're using knowledge that your character would not have.
Well, short of saying,
how can I actually get into this room right now while they're arguing?
You know,
like, well, why would you go into that room? You know, is there some kind of like thing you got to ask them just now?
When it comes to like, hey, here's a monster. Short of knowing, you know, the proper skill and rolling a proper check, you know, you have to just say, okay, well, what would my character do in a fight? You know, if you have a default, I swing a sword, I cast a spell. You know, you should know what your character would do. You know, you just do that. Unless you know something to specifically say, I wouldn't do that.
I noticed you did not have the runaway option in that thing.
Okay, yes, there is totally the, you know, I would run away, but I think that's going to fall into the, all right, what would my character do here? If he sees something, you know, big and loud, and he thinks, well, I don't think I could handle that.
You don't need to know that. I mean, you know as the player, oh yeah, this is like a challenge rated 9 monster. I'm totally dead if I fight it. I mean, no, but you might make your decision based on that, but really should be making your decision based on, your
How is
player.
how is the DM describing it?
Has gone in. Well, I mean, if there's just certain things that look disgustingly hard, and you just know that because you've swung a sword at enough things, or
Right.
you've lived through encounters. So I mean, there's certain things that, like, oh yeah, the puppy dog that has a bag of devouring for a mouth. Yeah, you're not really sure about that one. He looks kind of innocent.
But the Tarrasque.
But the Tarrasque.
You know a giant monster when you see a giant monster.
Yeah, and you're like, I can't handle this because it's got nails longer than my sword. That kind of mentality. So
Nails longer than
I mean,
my
those are
body.
kind of like obvious. Like, oh, it doesn't matter if I know what this monster is in the book. I should be running from it.
Right.
But like if you know the puppy with the devouring mouth, you're
Now,
like,
I guess there's a little bit of a gray area where I would say the gray area of where you can use player knowledge and let there be crossover is if it furthers the story and adds to what's going on. Like recently in your game, we were attacked by a bullet. And in our world, we have a place called Stonehome where the dwarves actually harvest parts from the bullet to make this special shark steel.
yeah. Right.
So I took player agency and said, well, I have cousins that live
In Stonehome.
in Stonehome. And so I know what a belay is and I know what they use them for. Now, I didn't use it to like dissect its combat abilities or anything like that.
You got a story reward out of it after the fact. And I thought that is okay, and that goes back to our video on player agency. And if you're doing something that's going to, as you say, further the story, it should totally be allowed.
Well, and not only that, like we have wilderness characters that I think they actually made checks to know what it was and to know things about it and to harvest the materials from it. Like I still don't actually know how to use the materials yet. I just have them.
Right.
You just know that they're supposed to be good.
Yeah, right. So like I think that's like the only time when it's kind of okay when you're furthering the story and you're making something more fun that can happen. And in this instance, like now, like Ted could be like, well, yeah, you can use that, but you're going to have to make a trip to Stonehome and talk to the dwarves there.
Yeah, you've turned. Well, I mean, by doing that little addition, you turned what was just going to be a combat into something that could be further adventures and other things that your character is going to want to do. So, I mean, I see that as a plus to it.
Right. Like so, like there can be an advantage for us. Our party from that, but there doesn't have to be because we may never learn the process.
Right.
We may never make the Stonehome. Stonehome may fall into the ground before we get there. Who knows what's going to happen? That's completely in the DM's realm, and he's going to decide. But had I said, okay, well, you know what, my character knows about Stonehome and he knows everything about belays, and started like. Maybe I have an edict memory myself and I've memorized the monster manual and I start spouting out to everybody what the bullet can do, then that would be an absolutely player knowledge don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't. So let's do more on the do scale on this end. So I would say I've gone back, especially at Ted's last session. I really went back and looked at my in 5th edition. You got the flaws, the bonds, the ideals, and things. And really kind of said, well, I want to play this character more than I just want to play, generic cleric of nature in this group. So I really was going back and focusing on those as kind of like my points to start off from. And I would say it's more important that you're role-playing that character than anybody else gets that impression. I mean, it's great that if you do things that are just like, yeah, that's definitely what that guy would do from what I've seen or from what he's told me about his background, it just makes sense. Like, I don't ever think to myself, Dave was not just playing, that dwarven wizard fighter guy. I mean, I just didn't feel it this time. I always feel like Dave is playing that guy. So, I mean, I don't know how much he goes back and reads that, but I try and do it because I found, there's that, that D&D player creep into, like, being a good player at the table rather than being that character more, even if it's, for the good and the bad kind of thing. So I say that, I say for a do, always try and go back to, what you wrote down about the character, when you see the character going. Not like game statistics and other things like that are like more gamist parts of it, but more of the, well, what's this character really going to do? How's this character really going to talk and interact with people?
I think that's a good point. My character in Dave's game, he's all about knowledge, but he also has the flaw of he doesn't keep a secret. His flaw is I can't keep a secret to save my life. So there hasn't been any situations where he's been interrogated, but we did get into
Dave
a situation.
Test that.
It actually has come up a couple times.
We came into where there's this deal that's supposed to be going on. The player's supposed to be handing this item over to somebody else, and he actually can't part with it. So we were involved in a conversation where he's supposed to be handing it over, and I'm like, well, what are you talking about? You got it. And it's like, it changed the whole dynamics of the situation because, the player kind of got caught in a bold-faced lie because he's saying he doesn't have it, and I'm like, oh no, you totally have it right there. It's kind of in your pack, or whatever.
He must have forgot that he picked it up.
So it's a situation where it's like, I had to remember that I can't be a part of these conversations, because the party's going to be like, I'm going to beat you down because we need to lie about this.
Yeah, but see, there's the difference between player knowledge and character knowledge. Like, your character should be bumbling into those situations all the time.
Absolutely.
Unless you're using your player knowledge to circumnavigate those situations.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be the other player's job to
They got to
keep me out of it.
They got to
It's
totally
like-
B.A. Baracus you.
It'd be like, hey, you, how about you go make the campfire and set up camp and start the rice and make sure you don't burn it.
Hey, didn't you say you wanted to work on that, that book
And
translation?
then be like,
that
oh,
you've been
thankfully now he's not here, so let's talk about this.
Now
thing we
let's
need to
lie
talk-
through our teeth.
Yeah, let's get this mercantile thing done, or
and-
lie through our teeth.
So then that winds up, dealing with the situation, but then it's like a shame for me because then I don't get to actually be a part of that role play.
Well,
But
you
it's-
get a bad trait like that, you're getting kicked out of some of the role playing as far as I'm concerned.
it fits for the character,
Especially when you have shady characters in the party.
Oh yeah, they're like, Paladin, I think I saw someone doing something naughty down the street right there.
slay them.
Yeah, but like, I'll be right back. Don't worry, we're all covered. We'll watch each other's backs. You go do that noble quest thing. Yes, I mean the paladin looking the other way, getting the paladin to look the other way is, I think, the challenge to the rogue is a lot of times. And I mean sometimes it's operational right underneath our right under our faces. But I agree, first when I thought about how would I just what would I think about being a character that doesn't lie all the time? It was like, well, you don't see the point of it, and you also just assume everyone's always telling the truth. So when someone does lie, you're like, well, he must have just forgot, or he must have just, there's always that kind of.
That's a little bit of a different concept in my opinion, because he's coupling the fact that his character's just kind of knave. With the fact that he doesn't lie, he doesn't keep a secret. Where you could absolutely be a paladin that pretty much assumes everybody's a liar, but you yourself never lie. Mm-hmm. But there are two different ways to play the same kind of character,
Right.
Which is awesome.
They're not all standard.
Yeah, for Ted to play that character, his character knowledge is he probably doesn't feel like other people lie.
Yeah.
I don't keep secrets, and I'm horrible at keeping secrets, and I don't tell lies, and at the same time probably feels like the other people feel the same way, unless he starts importing his player knowledge to be like, oh no, that's not really where it works, and he starts engineering things for his character to get around that flaw.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit back and engineer the situation. The players at the table, have to figure out I'm not going to be a part of this, and if they don't engineer me out, I'm going to mess stuff up.
Now, the out-of-game player knowledge that Ted could do is he can impart to the group going, hey guys, remember, Relion never cannot keep a secret, and he's not particularly good at lying.
Yeah.
So that's the case of
he's not
using
gonna
player
change.
knowledge to give to the other players, which is perfectly fine, because not everyone's going to memorize your character and your characterization of that character.
And especially
And they've seen it. They've all witnessed.
they've all witnessed. And
So that's the difference between saying, "Hey guys, I never lie."
and the
Deal
key
with it,
the
and
key
then-
point is if these characters are adventuring and traveling together, we're meeting once a month. Some people are in multiple games. Some people are in multiple gaming groups. So it's a situation of, well, if you're not memorizing facts and memorizing these details about the other players, there's nothing wrong with reminding players of, hey, I'm a role-playing challenge in this situation, deal with it, or deal with the consequences.
Right. So like that's a good example of player knowledge due.
Right.
In this case.
I think a player knowledge due would be kind of reminding everybody at the table at the beginning of the thing. You know how we go around and introduce ourselves. I think we should also say some major things.
Say a little bit about the character.
Remind them, hey, I'm always cool with making a deal, to as long as it's like on the lawful good spectrum of things, or I think it's on the lawful good spectrum of things.
So,
while other people are just like,
levels,
no,
huh?
I just won't deal with these people, or there's no, your guy won't tell a lie just because it's just his natural setting,
Right.
not because of some morality,
Right.
and he doesn't think anybody else lies either. So that's like a really just. What's your wisdom score? 3?
Actually, no.
Very high.
It's actually a 16.
Yeah, so I mean, just personality flaw. So reminding them about that as players at the table, I think, would be good because everyone can kind of start setting their mindset for, okay, I'm this character and these are the characters around me. So I think that's a player due for getting ready for the game.
Excellent.
So
I think.
did we cover it?
I think so.
think
We've
so.
come up with quite a few do's and don'ts for D&D, and you guys let us know what you think about player knowledge versus character knowledge. Give us your list of do's and don'ts right in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can tweet at us at Nerdarchy.
You can also check out Nerdarchy the store at nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.